Last July, a woman in Lubbock watched her entire raised bed collapse into dust. Tomatoes she had watered every single morning since April, fed with store-bought fertilizer, mulched with bags she paid $11 each for, all of it gone in a week of 105-degree wind. She spent close to $400 that season trying to grow food, and the only thing she harvested in her own backyard was frustration. And here is what nobody told her. It was never going to work, not because she lacked skill or discipline, but because the entire model she was following, the raised beds, the drip timers, the nursery, annuals bred for mild climates, all of it was designed for a world that doesn't exist in Texas. The system she trusted was built to sell her inputs every single spring and deliver absolute failure every single August. Drive through the hill country right now and just look at the soil. White calcium-crusted caliche, baked so hard you could skip a stone off it. Months pass without meaningful rain. The wind pulls moisture out of leaf tissue. It pulls it out faster than roots can replace it. This isn't a difficult growing season. This is a permanent condition. And yet people keep buying the same flats of berries from garden centers, keep installing irrigation systems that cost more per year than their grocery bill. They keep blaming themselves when the plants curl brown and quit. By midsummer, meanwhile, grocery prices climb another 12%. Supply chains stall over a single hurricane or a single rail strike. The produce aisle gets thinner and more expensive every single quarter. And the one thing that could actually buffer you against that fragility, a yard full of food producing plants, keeps dying on you because you were sold the wrong species for the wrong climate, sold the wrong species inside the wrong framework entirely. But here is what most Texas growers have never been shown. There is an entire category of fruit-bearing shrubs, native and adapted, shrubs that don't merely survive this punishment, they produce through it, real food, real harvests, year after year, without a single drip line running once their roots reach deep enough. Plants that were here long before irrigation ever existed, thriving on the brutal, dry, alkaline ground, the exact ground that kills everything at the garden center. The problem was never your thumb. The problem was nobody pointed you toward what actually belongs in this landscape. Here is the thing that nobody told her, and nobody told you either. That raised bed was dead before she ever put a seedling in it. Not because she chose the wrong tomato variety or watered at the wrong hour, but because the entire system she built was designed to need more of itself. The bagged soil she bought, the one labeled premium garden mix, at $40 a cubic foot, it had been completely sterilized, heated, processed, stripped of every living organism that would have made it. Actual soil, no mycorrhizal threads, no bacterial colonies breaking down phosphorus, breaking it into forms a root can actually absorb, just dead brown material that looks like earth, the way a plastic lemon looks like actual fruit. And then she added the granular fertilizer the bag told her to add, the 10-10-10, which did exactly what synthetic nitrogen always does. It gave the plant a chemical hit, forced fast green growth with absolutely no structural integrity, and simultaneously killed whatever fungal network might have been trying to colonize those roots. She was watering a plant that had no immune system, no nutrient partnerships, no way to access moisture below the first 6 inches of that box. Every single dollar she spent made the next dollar more necessary. This is the cycle, and it isn't accidental. The tilling breaks fungal hyphae that took months to form. Herbicide sterilizes the margins where beneficial insects would have lived. The fertilizer bypasses the soil food web, entirely training roots to stay shallow and dependent, like a patient on a drip who has forgotten how to eat. And when July hits and that cracked earth radiates heat into the canopy, there is nothing left underground to buffer the shock. No moisture held in fungal mats, no deep channels carved by earthworms, no slow release nutrients cycling through decomposition, just powder. Meanwhile, 30 feet from that raised bed, a wild agarita nobody planted is fruiting without a single drop of irrigation. Its roots run 3 feet deep into limestone rubble, threaded through with mycorrhizal connections that feed it phosphorus and water from deep pockets no synthetic system could ever reach. The difference is not genetics. The difference is that one plant was plugged into a living network, and the other was isolated inside a sterile box, just sold inputs until it starved to death. That distinction between a plant embedded in biology and a plant trapped in chemistry, it is the entire fault line most gardeners never see. There is a law operating 6 inches beneath the surface of every piece of ground right here in Texas, and it explains absolutely everything. When a Texas persimmon pushes its roots into cracked limestone on the edge of the Chihuahuan desert and still manages to hang black fruit in the dead of August, it is not performing a miracle. It is plugged into infrastructure, fungal threads thinner than a human hair, winding outward from those roots in every direction, connecting that single tree to a massive network of organisms, exchanging water, phosphorus, and chemical signals across vast distances, distances that would take the root system alone decades to reach. This is the soil food web. And it isn't poetry, it is plumbing. Picture it like this: own cubic teaspoon of healthy native soil contains more fungal filaments than there are miles of highway in the United States. Those filaments operate as a secondary root system, a system that the plant never had to build or feed. They bring moisture from pockets the roots cannot access. They deliver phosphorus locked in it that no root acid could dissolve alone, and in exchange, the plant sends sugars downward to feed the network, keeping the whole underground economy liquid. A persimmon fruiting in 105-degree heat with zero irrigation isn't tough. It is connected. It has allies you cannot see, doing work you never even scheduled. Now here is the part that should make your stomach drop. Every time you till soil, you sever that network. Every time you apply synthetic fertilizer, you collapse the chemical gradient. The gradient that those fungi use to negotiate trades. The plant stops needing its allies, and the allies starve. And within a season or two, the entire web is gone. The web beneath your raised bed is completely gone. You're left with a plant that has no underground economy, no water scouts, no mineral brokers, just roots alone in dead substrate, completely dependent on you, your hose, and your calendar. That isn't a garden. That is just life support. The plants that survive Texas summers without you aren't genetically superior in some exotic way. They simply never lost access to the network. An agarita rooted into undisturbed hill country soil. It has fungal partners that predate your house. A beautyberry thriving in the dappled shade of post oaks is tapped into a web that moves water laterally from moist pockets to completely dry ones, balancing the whole system without a single valve or timer. The law was always there. We just paved over it, poisoned it, and then blamed the sun for killing our tomatoes. And the plants that work inside this law share a pattern worth noticing, a rhythm of growth and rest that reveals exactly how the network sustains them, how it sustains them across the seasons. Here is what most people get wrong about building a food system. Doing it in a place like Central Texas, they assume the work scales with the harvest. More fruit means more water, more pruning, more amendments, more weekends spent managing something that was supposed to simplify their life. But the actual lever works in the opposite direction. The less you intervene after a certain threshold, the more productive the system actually becomes, because you're no longer the engine, the ecosystem is. Consider what happens when you plant a single beautyberry along a fence line. Plant it, and then do absolutely nothing. It pushes growth in spring, sets fruit by fall, and when a hard freeze hits, it dies back to the ground. You didn't cut it, you didn't cover it, the roots hold. And it just returns. No supplemental water through the summer drought. No fertilizer. But here is the part that matters far more than your personal harvest. Over 40 species of birds descend on that fruit. Native insects find habitat in the leaf litter beneath it. Those birds and insects become your pest. Control, your pollination force, your seed dispersers. You planted one shrub. The system hired its own workforce. The same principle operates with pomegranate, a plant so perfectly matched to punishing heat. The fruit actually sweetens under conditions that would kill a tomato. Drive through the old neighborhoods of San Antonio or El Paso. You'll find specimens decades old, producing heavy crops, producing them on nothing but rainwater and neglect. The roots went deep during that first establishment year. They found their own moisture and never asked for yours again. That initial patience, that willingness to water for one season and then step completely back is the entire cost of entry. After that, the pomegranate becomes a net producer with zero ongoing input from you. And then there is Texas lantana, a plant most people dismiss as purely ornamental, never realizing it has been feeding people on this land for thousands of years. The ripe black berries are edible. The flowers pull in pollinators by the dozens, doing it across months of continuous bloom. You aren't just growing one more food source. You're installing a biological magnet. It draws the living infrastructure your entire garden depends on. Every butterfly that visits the lantana is a pollinator that also visits your squash. Every bird eating the beautyberry is a bird eating grasshoppers off your beans. This is the lever. You don't build the system piece by piece through labor. You place a few carefully chosen anchors and step away. Let 40 million years of co-evolved relationships do the assembly for you. The network was always there, waiting in the soil, and the seed bank, waiting in the migratory patterns. Overhead, your only job was to stop interrupting it. So picture the next time a supply chain buckles. Maybe it is a freeze that shuts down trucking corridors for a week. Maybe it is another round of inflation, pushing a pint of blueberries past $6. Maybe it is something nobody has named yet. You'll watch your neighbors line up outside a grocery store with half-empty shelves, buying whatever bruised produce remains at whatever price the sign says. And you will walk into your backyard instead. You'll reach into a mulberry so loaded with fruit that the branches bow under their own weight, a plant that hasn't asked for a single drop of water in 2 years. And you'll eat something that is actually alive, actually sweet, actually yours. That isn't a fantasy, that is what a 2-year establishment window purchases for you. It purchases that for you permanently. Everything we've talked about leads to this single realization. The agarita on the hillside, the prickly pear along the fence line, the pomegranate anchoring the south wall. These aren't decorations, they're infrastructure. The kind of infrastructure that doesn't require a monthly payment. It doesn't depend on a diesel truck arriving on schedule and doesn't care whether the grid stays up. Once those roots hit deep Calishan limestone. Once the fungal networks lace through the soil and begin feeding the plant in ways no fertilizer bag can replicate, you've built something that operates outside the economy entirely. No invoice, no subscription, no terms of service. And I want you to hold 2 images side by side. In one, a person is refreshing a delivery app watching an order get delayed, then canceled, then repriced 15% higher. In the other, someone is pulling a colander of desert hackberries off a shrub, one that has fruited every single May for the last decade without intervention. One of those people has food security. The other has a login and a hope. The difference between them isn't money, not acreage, not talent. It is a decision made 2 or 3 years earlier to stop outsourcing survival to a system that was never designed to prioritize them. This was never about gardening as a hobby. Hobbies are things you do when everything else is handled. What we're talking about is a quiet, almost invisible act, reclaiming the most basic agreement a person can make with the land beneath their feet. That if you respect its patterns and plant what actually belongs there, it will feed you without condition and without end. And that is not a trend.